93 got that beat.
What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. In every episode, we get the distinct pleasure and honor to speak to a brother and sister that's doing exceptional work in every field of human endeavor. And they share their God stories, the ways in which God has been at work in their life and the ways in which God has been at work through their work. Today, it is no different, man. I got D in the house. I got Detroit in the house. I got my brother, Brian Adamson. What's going on, King?
What's going on, bro? Appreciate you having me, man.
Man, I appreciate it, man. I should have come. What up, though? Yeah, I mean, I can't speak with the trick language, but I'm a shout out my brother here. But I want to get into it. I don't waste time, man. We always started with who is Brian Adamson, man. But I want to at least give some context, man. That you are somebody who is navigating in a space that I think seems to be hot now. Right. Yeah. Real estate space, right. From residential and how you actually teach people to really leverage. And the worst use of your word leverage is a real one. How to best leverage that asset, to actually build not only accretive deals, but actually to have ownership that actually makes sense. And I think for people who have found themselves in this year kind of, let's say, knocked off their square, people have been hungry for other avenues of bringing in income and sustainability that have intergenerational impact in their lives. And so I would say that you are, for such a time as this, you are in a industry, in a space that needs light. And so I say that even without giving you the giving people the full rundown. So let's jump into it, man. Who is Brian Adamson?
Yeah, so as you alluded to, from Detroit originally, man. I've been here in Orlando the last 10 years, born and raised in Detroit. Started getting in trouble early in late in my teen years, I should say. When I was 17 years old, I was looking at a 4 to 10-year felony. Was on my way to college and, had a full ride academic scholarship and flunked out my freshman semester. In that same time, got my now wife and girlfriend pregnant and was kicked out the house, right? So from the span of 10 years old, in a 6-month period, I had some really tragic things that was happening in my life. But the thing, my superpower, if you will, during that time was that I also found Christ. So, although I grew up, kind of, I would say, in the church, old school Baptist church, at about the age of 13, I didn't really see the value, right? I always believed in God, but I didn't. For me, church was kind of a turnoff, right? At 13, old school Baptist church, you're there 3-4 hours. I just didn't get it, right? And so I stopped wanting to do the formality of going to church. And my mom, she eventually let me just have my way. And, because of the dark places I started to get into, I found my way to Christ when I needed to find him. And, I tell people all the time, I can't sit here before you and act like I knew everything then. All I knew was that I had a huge void in my life. I believed in getting my fire insurance, right? Initially, I got baptized just for the sake of, I believed heaven and hell was real and I didn't want to go to hell. And I knew the path I was going down was leading me to that. And by virtue of doing so, though, it started something in my life that I can't really articulate, but I know it was the catalyst to getting me to where I am 18, 19 years later. And fortunately, I was able to, get on the other side of that case. I ended up getting probation. And because of the age I was, my record completely clean. Everything was a sponge. I got a beautiful now 18-year-old daughter who's just finished her first year in college studying health law. My then girlfriend now is my wife for 14 years and we've been together 20. Went back to school after leaving for a year to make sure that my daughter and my wife had insurance and all those things for the birth of my child, and graduated cum laude in 4 years, right? And the grades is not important. I have to just show people the dichotomy between how it started and then how it went, right? And the thing that I would say that changed in all of that process was the fact that I gave my life to the Lord. And although I didn't fully know what that meant and I was still leading the same kind of life, essentially, he knew what that meant, and he knew my heart. You know what I mean? And so things started to happen, right? And it's just that I wasn't sensitive to everything coming from him because of the lifestyle that I was leading. But now, you know, hindsight being 2020, looking back on everything, and because of where I'm at in my faith, he kept me the entire time, man. And, you know, just and bringing me from that place and, you know, propelling me to where I am now. I'm clear. It's not me. It's totally him. I just happen to be faithful enough to keep showing up.
I appreciate I appreciate this. I like the way you set this up, right? Because I think for many people, it's kind of, you may just drop off the titles and you're giving context. Yeah. To say, yo, it wasn't always this way, and I can't take credit for all of this. One of the things I think has been a theme, or at least that just hooks me a bit, is I think opportunism sounds a bit negative in the context when we hear it generally today, like being opportunistic, being sensitive to things. But in one way, you say you weren't sensitive to God in the way that you are now. None of us are, you know, where we were, but you were certainly sensitive to opportunity early, right? And so you find yourself kind of like pre-complete meltdown, right? As you're still figuring things out. Yeah. But you see, you know, you see, you know, cats are getting it out here on the real estate front. You know, so what made you what was it? Was it the fact that, you know what I'm saying? I got to find a way out of what I'm already doing. What made you open to that initial door being open up front? And you were clearly sensitive to that, bro.
1000%. The funny thing is that I've told this story in front of crowds, and I use the word opportunistic. And that's why it's funny to hear you say that, because for me, that's exactly what it was. You know, my dad asked me recently, I was in Detroit looking at an apartment building. And just last week, he was like, you know, how did you get this in you, this business sense? He said, because me and your mom didn't have it. My dad was a firefighter for 30 years. My mom's a cashier at a grocery store for 25 years. So I come from super blue collar family. And he said, I know some of it is God given, but I just don't know like where it came from. And what I shared with him is this: at 12, I knew I was going to be a money guy. Like at 12 years old, I knew I was going to be a money guy. Now, obviously that meant something different to me then. And in my pursuit of it, that meant something different as well. Now I know what that meant. It means that I'm going to be a financial instrument for the kingdom. I'm going to have massive wealth in order to be the hands of Jesus and do his work, right? But I knew at 12 that I would be the money guy. And so to your point, when we talk about being opportunistic, I was in relentless pursuit of any opportunities that could feed this thing that was in my spirit. And, you know, just made a lot of bad choices in pursuit of that. But eventually, when other opportunities presented themselves that seemed to be a little more wholesome and more aligned with, you know, what I should have been doing, I took full advantage. And so one of my homeboys in Detroit, he was flipping houses back in 2006, which was at the height of stated income loans. This is what kind of bolstered the whole economic downturn, is because unqualified buyers were getting these loans because anybody with a post could show up, fill out an app, and the bank would lend you money. Well, I was in college. This was my junior year. I had already done all the ignorant stuff with refund checks. And so he presented me the opportunity. And so I was able to take $7,000 refund check and gift a person that he was flipping a house to as their down payment. In reciprocity, he gave me a return on that investment. And so that's literally how I got started in the business. I was so ignorant to the fact that he was flipping houses that I never took time to learn that process. I just knew that I had a way that I could legitimately make money through his process. And so eventually, while I was at college, I bought 3 rental properties of my own. I leveraged myself personally. I didn't understand LLCs and tax shelters and asset protection, none of that, being opportunistic. And, you know, built a home for new construction home when I was 23, my senior year in college. So when I graduated college, I moved into a new construction home, and you know, we were over leveraged. So quickly in 2008, we everything we had leverage on, we were upside down on. But fortunately, because of, you know, all of the transactions that I was doing, I was liquid enough to take advantage of the market when it had contracted. So I bought over 20 properties from 2008 to 10. Graduated college, ended up going to corporate America, and you know, worked there in tandem with doing my real estate stuff for about 9 years until I finally retired from corporate and just been doing real estate full time. And so finally got to a place where I felt like my real estate business was becoming stagnant because you only can go as far as your resources and your knowledge, right? And so I did a really good job based on, you know, who was my immediate environment. And when I looked to my right and left, I seemingly was doing better than most. But because of my lack of knowledge, it was still holding me back in a lot of regards. And so I finally went, you know, made a sizable investment into a mentorship program, learned the business of real estate investing, not just the hustle and the hobby of it that I would say I was participating in before. And, you know, from that was able to get some systems and processes, learn how to leverage other people's money. And, you know, went out and bought over 20 flips. My first year, raised over $1 million in private money. And, you know, was really aggressive in my pursuit once again. And for this, you know, for the first time, feeling like I had the tools, you know, at my disposal to actually go out and create this life that I wanted. And, you know, like anything else, while things were going great, started to have infrastructure problems and, you know, lost $500,000 in that process. And that's when God showed up again in a major way.
Bro,
right?
you can't speed past that because clearly you say 500,000 people like 500,000, right? So I'm gonna need you to slow down. We're gonna back the truck up, right? So because I want to hold this. We're gonna go back to this. So we make sure we don't miss a thing. So I was part of the thing that was always shaking me up as learning about your story was this, like, you talk about 2008. Like that wasn't something. I was one of those cats, right? Even during that time, I wanted to go. The whole move before them was going and purchasing a place in Atlanta, right? So I was like, oh, I need to go to Atlanta. I need to purchase these places. I remember it was 12 Centennial apartments right there. My boy purchased one. I'm like, yo, I got some money. I'm going to purchase one. I ended up trying to go for a jumbo joint. I was just trying to be big over my britches. I was like, yeah, I want to get something bigger. I didn't get approved for it.
Yeah.
But when everything tanked, he's underwater. He ended had to take a loss on it. It was a blessing. I didn't go into that. I say that to say it still shook so many people up. Once they got hit, they saw themselves underwater. Some people put down the brakes, but you kind of was like, you were like, I have some liquidity, but it wasn't like, okay, liquidity to get me out and get me out at sea level. It was like, oh, I got some liquidity. I'm gonna keep going it. So where was that a conversation even with God at that, where he showed up, where he's just like, yo, where did that fearlessness come from? Or was it a fearlessness? Was it a faith thing? Just take us back into that. And then I want to go into the 500,000.
It that's funny you say that, because while most people did contract, I expanded during that time. But for me, and this is a gift and a curse. This is where God is working on me now through the season, is that he's wired me in such a way that if I see so much of a crevice of an opening, I'm going through it. You know what I mean? So for me, it's never a quit in me. And he wired me that way, which is great. But then sometimes he has to definitively close doors because he know I'm just going to keep working and pushing my way through because my faith. And so for me at that time, I saw more opportunity than I ever saw. I was like, oh no, this just the start of something. This ain't over with. You know what I mean? Like, and while many people were folding up the tent and packing their bags, I saw it as an opportunity to actually grow during that time. So it's just, I tell people all the time, you change your perspective, you could change your situation. And for me, the perspective was, I just ain't getting no loans no more. I'm about to buy these cash. You know what I mean? And that was just the way that I looked at things.
It's I think one of the biggest things that I think people hear and understand of this idea of, there's two things. One, not trading time for money, that being a big mental shift. And then two, having your money work for you, which is, especially if you don't come from family where that financial education around how an asset becomes accretive, how you actually try to put that money to work for you versus the savings. That's a really big shift. So for you were just in this position to roll with it. So so now as you're growing and building, and as you talked about kind of your faith, kind of like you're maturing like everybody else along the way, how was God talking to you about how you were building the business? And was that part of the challenge around the infrastructure issue, or was that just cost of doing business and something just came up?
It was both. I never really thought about it this way until you just asked me the question. It was, put it this way. put it this way. At that time, I was doing things with God's help. Now I'm at a place in my life where I'm doing things, he's doing things with my help. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So at that time, I was doing what I saw fit and asking for help through prayer. Whereas now I'm sitting in prayer asking him, what do you want me to do? You follow me? And so I led myself into these places by virtue of the fact that I was going to him secondary as opposed to first.
Double click on it. So let's put us in the story, man. Put us in that moment where one of them situations.
So now we get into a place, and just to get this context from a worldly perspective, there were reasons why this happened, right? In terms of the infrastructure problems, the particular mentorship program I was in at the time had people that were posing to be doing deals, but they really weren't. So when I started to call these coaches for help, nobody could really tell me other than the stuff they tell you from the front of the room. And that's no knock or no indictment against them, but it was a matter of fact for me. Truth of the matter is, though, is we know that there's a higher call in that place, right? And so, from the worldly view, there was some hiccups based on lack of infrastructure and things of that nature. But more importantly, I would say that I knew God before, but I got to know him during that time. Because to your point that you are, like, many people haven't made 500,000, much less been in position to lose it and still be here to talk about it thereafter, right? And so at that time, he had my attention like he had never gotten it before. So because he knows that he wired me as such that at 12, I wanted to be the money guy, then guess what he typically does to get my attention? Things involving money, right? So during that time, he showed me what it meant to lean on him. Because, like, again, how many people can I go and get counsel from? How much can I put this burden on my wife who she can identify, but can't really identify? Just many people haven't encountered something like that. So I was forced to lean on him. And I say that not to be begrudgingly, but it was a shift in the way that I had been doing things before. And, during that, he started to show me, okay, now let me show you something. So he started to give me resources, right? God sends, I used to call them, during that time to help pull me out of that place. And then on the other side of it, it set me up to make millions of dollars on the other side. But also that was the birthing place of my mentorship program. It just took 2 years for it to realize. And through that, and that became a part of my testimony, so that now that I have this international mentorship program where I teach people how to invest in real estate remotely, leveraging other people's money, I'm the navigation system that says, don't go that way, go this way. There's a pothole right there, you go around it. And so I'm able to help them mitigate those big mistakes that I made. And, I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not endured what I went through.
This is powerful, because I think this piece is universal. One, there's the piece of when the shift happens from being the producer to the multiplier, right? And I think even for you approach it differently, because it's a view of apprenticeship is the term that you associate, kind of BBR, education group, investment group. You're thinking of apprenticeship. Sometimes people say, I can't get there until I've arrived there, meaning I'm the person saying, here's how you get up the mountain. And then there's a model of, we all getting up the mountain together, but I have some traction. Let's all kind of go together. How did your faith inform? When was it just that I hit a moment where God had to open me up, and because of the experience of hitting a wall and not really having the apprenticeship that I needed, though I got it from God, I didn't have the worldly apprenticeship that I needed. I realized that was a gap, that God filled the gap, but God was also directing me into a ministry. Like, is that kind of how you did the calculus in your head?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now that part, that's where my alignment with God was coming together, to where I identified a gap in the world by way of these different programs. And my modus operandi at that time was to fill that gap. And so I was still a part of a network. I was helping people that was in that particular network close that gap. And then eventually, that evolved into me going on and having my own network, and then officially facilitating the environment to give everybody everything from A to Z.
Bruh, this is dope, man, because I talk about like genuine help, kingdom help, right? And I think a good thing of these times is that there is so many people that are in a space of wanting to help people, teach people how economy, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a beautiful thing if you have learned and you want to share knowledge, and that there are particular people who could reach a specific set of people because they see themselves, they can relate, they connect. Great. How do you distinguish the work that you do in this space that has become very full, very mm-hmm. noisy? Everyone is talking about flipping and real estate, and like, how does God help you distinguish yourself, in this space? Because there's not everybody, like you said, not everybody's doing what they're saying they're doing. Not everybody's in it with a genuine heart for you. I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. I don't really want them to be able to level up in a real way. How do you distinguish yourself? How does God help you do that?
I show up as me every day, right? And by virtue of me showing up as me, then I mean that He shows up every day. So if you go to, people use God at their convenience. Okay, I'm keeping it 100% funky.
Keeping it alive,
right?
Keeping it alive, bro.
People use God at their convenience in our space. Social media, it's the bumper sticker quotes, it's all of that. But I show up every day with Him first. And so every morning I get up, the first thing I post in my social media stories is scripture, or it's a devotional that I read. And then as the day progresses, you'll see me mixing in business and all the rest of it. And people have gotten accustomed to that rhythm. And it's starting to help other people get into a rhythm. And so, as much as I thought about, the fact of how great the whole mentorship program is, really found out that God was giving me a platform to do His work. And I've come to that realization in recent months. And it's the Holy Spirit has been talking to me even more in that capacity here recently. And, I would say that is the difference. One of the differences, right? The other piece is just that I'm giving people fundamentally exactly what they need to go out and execute. So while, faith is at the apex of what I do, I'm not, beating people in the head to a point where if they aren't there in their faith walk, that they still not getting the stuff that they need from me without feeling, condemned or convicted in any kind of way that they have to follow me in my faith walk. I'm just showing up being, and I'm trusting that God is going to put the ones that identify with me, whether they far off or near, in my path, and we're going to do great things together. I mean, just as a quick example, in Christmas in Detroit, about 8 or 10 of my apprentices got together with me, and I partnered with this other guy, Gerald Boykin in Detroit. He's got a I'mAblessing.org, and we gave away a vehicle to a lady for Christmas. Unbeknownst to her, she's a single mom. And so, not only do we get money together, but we do philanthropy, we do life together. And, I got students asking me about scripture and what does this mean? And, so it's a beautiful thing, bro. Like it's one of those things where I'm just not that smart. You know what I mean? I'm high, but this is divine work. Like, and I'm clear on that.
Yo, I want to stay in the paint on this one, man, because I think there are two things. One, when you're giving so much, I think people see this, whether they transition, like I said, from the producer to the multiplier, whether they're in a company and they go from the analyst to like the manager, director, and or pastoral lead, right? That the congregation grows and it's like, dag, I'm not talking to everybody. Like, how have you been able to structure your time and structure the business or the apprenticeship, the group, the program in a way that you could give of yourself authentically, but give of yourself sustainably, right? Man. Where you have so many people asking and pulling and you're like, all right, I wanted to be authentic. Should I train somebody to do this? What part of it's the green? What part of it's green where they could just do? Like, how did you go through that? Or maybe is it just a source thing? How do you sustain in this type of work?
Yeah. So I'll give you two different points of view. One being, I multiplied my efforts by starting iFlip University, which is an online, on-demand university where people can buy the course and learn at their own leisure, at their disposal. So I don't have to be necessarily present in that regard. And then we got a Facebook community where I can still engage and things of that nature. And then my apprentices, who are my one-on-one students, I only take, a select few per month. So we keep the volume down because I'm looking for quality versus quantity. It's not just about the check. It's about, if I'm going to spend my time with people, to your point, it's got to be the right kind of people. It's got to be people pour into, and I get fed from feeding. So in reciprocity, these people are feeding me inadvertently. They don't even know. So I go through an interview process with every one of my potential clients to make sure that they're a right fit for the program. And so that's how I kind of keep the volume down, right? So I'm being as effective. I feel like, I'm touching as many people as I need to, because as I told you, I'm more focused on the from than the through. And so I feel like, if God, wants to increase the from, then he'll also help me to replicate my efforts in another way as well, to be able to sustain whatever that growth spurt can be. And so, I have somewhat of a succession plan in place. I got one of my mentees who's taking on more of a senior role. And so we're working in the background, but I'm just in no hurry because I'm letting God have his way, and but I'm also being prepared because God likes order. So I'm preparing, right? No different than Noah building the ark forever until it finally rains. So I'm preparing, I'm getting my ducks in a row. And then that way, God can have his way when it's time.
Bro, this is powerful, because I think that people sometimes forget the order, perhaps, and perhaps the learning of putting things in order and multiplying. I think we're called to that, obviously, from a filial, perspective. But there's something to be said about the example that gives us in all the work that we're doing. That how are we multiplying? Are we thoughtful about our bandwidth so that we can go deep? And then when you go deep, you could multiply deeply out of that because of what you've poured in. So I think that's important. That's something I've been navigating, but I think that's something so many people are navigating. I also think there's a part of the content and why it matters that makes it also heavy. Meaning when you have such a personal investment in something, right, where it matters to you, there's a personal significance, it taxes you higher. So you talked about Detroit, and in my understanding, with my little understanding of Detroit and what's happened in real estate, I remember there was a time when, cash was coming in there, not necessarily from the city, buying up houses, dollar homes, kind of taking it up, flip it. So much has changed. From downtown has changed, but a lot of those houses have been picked up from people who are not necessarily from the community. So how do you feel from a kingdom perspective and redemption perspective, like God has been equipping you as you think about your hometown, as you think about Detroit and just the different movement in market trends that's happening around real estate?
I think he equipped me such that I moved from Detroit to Florida in December of 2010, right? And so I've been investing in Detroit since 2006 when I got started. My perspective of Detroit now is totally different than what it was being a product of that environment while I was there. So when I go back and I'm my investment efforts and actually a lot of my students internationally, some in Denmark and other places, even invest in Detroit, which is great because obviously that's a hub for me and a lot of people see the opportunity, and I know that they're learning under the same auspice that I teach. And so they're coming in with the right intentions, doing the right things in the right communities, right? So that in and of itself was a blessing and is a blessing. But God gave me a different vantage point from leaving to coming back, as opposed to had I stayed there, I think it would have been more about just turning a buck as opposed to redeeming the community, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I think that's why this is important, right? Because I think people do see the dollar. And again, the dollar is not evil. The power is not evil. It's like, what do we do with the dollar? How do we actually steward the dollar? And I just see it's almost like the gold rush, the California gold rush happening now with flipping. But I don't know how much public conversation is happening around the responsibility. And to your point, that your group, your program has been a way for you to be infusing the next generation of people doing this with the mindset and understanding of how to do it well, not only profitably but responsibly for the people. And I think it's an example. 'Cause I think people sometimes that's I think why this is a powerful conversation, right? Because I think that people don't recognize the power really that they have in their work, what they build, that they actually like, you know what? Here's my piece of it. But now if I can multiply and I'm having 200 people come out every year, 1,000 people come out every year, and they have this understanding, the world's going to be better, whether people recognize that came through God, through me or not. So this is dope. I have to ask this, man, because I think for those who are cut, I call made men and women, for those who are kind of cut with this very fearless cloth, sometimes it's kind of like, this brother got ice in his veins, man. Like, was he ever scared? It's the Mamba mentality, situation where it's just like, was his brother scared? You tell us about a moment where you actually felt some sense of fear about this thing going down, or maybe I'm over leveraged. This is too much. And I'm talking about maybe later on, right? Because obviously you've done better, right? But have you encountered fear at any level of it, and how did God walk with you through that if you did?
As long as you're stretching yourself, right? Because I believe in the sports adage: if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Yeah. And so nothing stays the same, right? And so for me, in order to get better, I have to continuously push myself into places of vulnerability. And so I think that, I'm fearful in most transactions, to be quite honest. Like, I recently, over the last 9 months, pivoted into commercial multifamily. I just got done working on a big 136 unit deal in Flint, Michigan. And, I got a 36 unit that I'm buying, a 23 unit that's also about to close here soon. And so in each one of those transactions, at the onset, there is a certain dimension of fear, but I think that it's healthy. I think that just, number one, means that you understand the responsibility behind it. I oftentimes more concerned for people that say that they don't have any kind of angst, because, I think that at that point you're leaving yourself susceptible to a lot of bad things happening. You're not as keen on all the potentials of what could go wrong. And so I experience it frequently. But at the same time, the difference that I would say between myself and others is I just do it afraid, right? As greater is he that is in me. And I remind myself of that, is I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me, right? Yeah. And it's through. And so it's those things that I remind myself. If we make it about us, then we will continue to have these limitations that stifle us, and many times really rob us from the very purpose in life that we have, the dreams, the aspirations, and all of it. The people that do different, in my opinion, are those that can feel those same emotions, but then trust, right, that God is going to pull them through, and that if he brought you here, he'll get you through. And so I just lean on that, man. I can't tell you how many times where, I pray and then I just move. You know what I'm saying? And it ain't that my heart still ain't fluttering. But I just pray and I just move. And then it's this peace after I do it,
Bam. Bro, you giving messages, man, to people, man. I'm maximizing this time, because I know we're coming on the tail end, man. We coming on the home stretch of this. But, brother, I always say this, like, coming up, we didn't come up with much money at all, right? When I came over, my sisters, man, and my parents came in this country in the late 70s. And just like, as we would say, get out the mud, right? They did that and did the best that they could. But, I think there's almost a survival mindset that kicks in, right? They had nobody else to lean on. They had each other. And they're kind of like, well, it's just like, we make it, we got to make this work. We got kids, we got kids to feed. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference when you're hustling single, right? You're like, I can eat tuna fish. I'm good. I could just, but then when you have a wife, you have a daughter at that time, it's a different calculus, fam. Like for the brothers and or sisters But I'm specifically want to speak into the brothers who find themselves when in situations where they're building businesses and you have someone depending on you, right? And you're taking steps, and sometimes convincing that person works. Like, what was the wisdom that you discerned over the years? Obviously, of you being married, you having a family, right? And what were some of the learnings or wisdom that you learned from that in you taking these risks, you praying, you being like, oh, we down, and she not telling you, like, yo, pack it up, let's get out, we crapped out, let's 4, 5, 6, get out, right? Like, just how did you navigate that? What's some of the wisdom you've discerned over the years in your marriage of taking big risks and having real responsibilities at home?
I'm so glad you asked this, man. There's two things. All right. And I'm going to start with the one that's most important to me. Never rob God. Tithing has saved me through the years. Like, tithing is my financial fundamentals. Like, God gets his before anybody. Mortgage company, Uncle Sam, I don't care who it is, wife and daughter included. Like, God gets his off the top, right? I cannot stress to y'all how important that is. Like, I seen myself at one point, and I'm gonna get back, but I just wanted to quickly share this.
Go ahead, King. Go ahead.
You know, the year I retired from work, I also retired. I retired on January 6th. I stopped drinking on February 8th after 18 years, and I watched God triple my income. I tithed my almost 6-figure salary from work that year. I saw him triple my income. Like, nobody retires and triples their income the same year, and so, like, and I'm clear on it's because of my body of work through tithing. And just so everybody knows, tithing is not hitting the lottery, but what it does do is it gives you a covering, right? A certain aspects of your life is covered beyond your finances. And when you rob God, he can take that covering off, which leaves you susceptible to the enemy and all of his antics. So I just can't stress to you enough. Give him his 10%. And I'm talking about cheerfully. It was times when, you know, I was working in corporate America and, you know, the real estate business was slow. And we really, I was only getting 66 2/3 of my pay. We really didn't have enough to cover the bills, you know, looking at the spreadsheet. And I was like, but we still got to tithe. Like, we have to do this. And I just know, like, and everybody got their own outlook. It's not about the church. Let me just clear that up, right? It's not about the church. It's about your obedience to God. So regardless of what your church, whatever your experience at. Thing. So that's the first thing. The other thing, as it pertains to a lot of time, and I encounter this with people coming into the program. Sometimes the husband is on board, but the wife need convincing. Sometimes the wife on board, but the husband need convincing. The biggest hang up that most people have in life is that they don't keep their word, right? If you start to set the standard, right, good, bad, or indifferent, that you do the things you say you're going to do, even in the midst of failure, you still garner a certain type of respect from your better half. You just do. But people that say they're going to do something, they don't see it through, they don't follow through. Like, if you lying to yourself and then you lying to others. And so by virtue of that, you don't get the latitude that people get when you actually show up and perform, good or bad, whatever the outcome. And so, you know, I just say that to say, yeah, although I had the adversity and although it wasn't popular, some of the decisions that I was making, my wife also believed that I was going to always figure it out because I always kept my word. Regardless of what challenge I have, I always figure it out. And, you know, now more than ever, she knows that because she knows who's at the apex of everything that I do.
Woo! I mean, that's hot off the grill, man. That's to keep your word. I mean, it was the scripture says, even if it inconveniences you, like even if it causes you pain, to keep your word. But that is so powerful, the integrity in your relationships, the impact that has. But the most important one to have integrity with is with God. And a lot of times that's made manifest in your obedience to the things that other people may or may not see. And I always say that often we our relationship with God is most exposed at the extremes. Extreme abundance, extreme lack. Is when you start getting shaken down like that, it's like, oh, now that you got it, I see where you at. Now that you took it away, I see where you at. And I think that, to your point, that is something that is a really, really powerful informing thing. Yo, King, this we got to have another part 2 on this, bro, because this man, clearly, we talk about teaching gifts, right? Like you talked about whether I tithe in the church or not. I think some people forget whether you believe in God or not, and you just kind of maybe thumb through scripture a bit. People hear about the gifts, and they hear about gifts of teaching and these were to build up the people of God, the church, the ecclesia. These were given to build up the king, build up the people that God has called to steward. And so I love it when it's kind of like, it's just like you just sit down and you're just like, man, you were always tithing because you're always a child of God and you felt that sense. But there's also this piece of just like, yo, man, you teaching, right? Not in a preacher professorial place, but you teaching from a place of real. And I think that people are hungering for real. And I think the fact that you're bringing real to an industry that I think has become very saturated, I think that cuts through a lot of the things. I got to ask you this as we close, good brother, man, like, what is your rhythm? You talked about the morning and your devotional time, man. And, but like I said, with the wife, children, all that, a lot of times it's like the structure. I'm a very military oriented. I didn't do the military, but I was a track and field guy. So it's like structure, order, get up, workout, boom, boom, prayer. But what is your rhythm? What is your ideal rhythm with God to kind of keep you rocking and keep you rolling with all the stuff you got in the air?
Absolutely. So it's and I can appreciate what you said about rhythm, because most people say, how do you balance it all? And I know, like, rhythm is the language of entrepreneurs, right? And that's why I can appreciate what you just said. And for me, it tries to start at 5:30 every day, right? And get up, let the dogs out, go spend my time in the prayer closet, literally in the closet, sitting on a pillow in the closet, unencumbered, and read my devotional. And I got to spend 30 minutes to an hour with God every morning. You know what I mean? Like, just so everybody clear, that started out at 5 minutes. It was a drive-by prayer, for the longest time. But then I figured out that I was doing it backwards. I was, again, coming to him after the fact, as opposed to going to him before my day. And so I tried to spend 30 minutes to an hour with him in the morning, and then, do my stuff in the bathroom, go to the gym, and then get my first meeting after that. From here, it's a continuum. You know what I mean? I hit him up, and it could be a quick conversation. It don't have to always be this holier than thou, this mechanical approach. It's just, Lord, lead me right here, man. Like, I have it's that, and I got chills just talking about it, because it's people missing out. I think that they got to stop thinking of this mystical thing and understand that it's Emmanuel, this guy with us. Talk to him, and he's there for a reason. And so for me, it's a continuum all throughout my day, and for every moment that I'm stuck, I'm reaching out to him. And then recently, he told me he wanted me to get in the scripture more. So at 6 o'clock, from 6 to 7, I block my schedule off. And from 6 to 6:30, I get in the scripture. And then from 6:30 to 7, I do something, intellectual, stimulate, listen to an audio book. I'm not a big reader. The only thing I do read is the Bible. Everything else I do is audio. So that's something, and it's an evolution, man. I probably hit in 2 weeks, 3 of those 6 o'clock so far. But it's the fact that I put it on my calendar, and it's something I'm going to continue to work towards. People have to start giving themselves grace and understand that it's not all or nothing, right? None of this is all or nothing. It's consciously making steps and strides towards the things that you really want. And so just because you have a bad day, just because you have a bad week, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Get right back on.
Fam, I'm going to let that breathe, man. I'm going to let that breathe, brother. Man, this has been such a gift, man. Like, I'm so thankful for what God is doing in your life, what he's done through your life, how he's kept you, the testimony that you're able to take with you, that he's still writing. I thank you that he's dealing with you as he deals with all of us from the inside out. that you're a model for men, black men, all men, that you were able to take what God gave you, and you're also to take what the world gave you, and you're able to move with it. You're able to be accountable. You're able to see the grace that could have taken you down a path, but God graced you, able to be on the other side of something that could have had you go somewhere left, and you did something right. And beyond doing something right, you're doing right by so many people by giving everything that he gave you, and you pouring it into them on a daily basis. Brother, man, for that and much more, man, I thank you, man. I have respect, such great respect for you as a kingdom brother, man. But I'm just excited to see what's ahead, because you didn't bury the talents. You didn't put that one in the dirt. And so I'm excited about how much more he's going to give you and how many more people are going to help. I mean, I'm getting excited, man. I'm just like, man, I gotta adjust some things, man. I was like, I'm gonna roll with him, do something on the real estate side. Figure this out, man. My brain's like, I gotta connect them with my dude, and like, so, bro. So either way, we gonna get with it. But brother, for anybody and everybody who see this and listen to this, want to support you, see what you got going on ahead. What do you have that's ahead, and how do people best connect with you?
For me, it's just ING, right? And so I think that as long as, and I appreciate that sentiment too, Lawrence. I appreciate you even having me here, man, and being able to share. Definitely kindred spirits. Like it was divine that we here today. Make no mistake about it. And what I would say is just, the mantra of my company is stick to the mission, right? And I think everybody, regardless of what industry they're in, what their belief system is, everybody can identify with sticking to the mission, identify what's the mission. And regardless of what adversity comes about, you just absolutely stick to that by all means. And so, I like to say that I live my life in ING mode. People oftentimes ask me certain things and they're like, you don't remember that? I live my life in such an ING mode that I have to really sit still to go back and remember a lot of things that's happened. And so I think that if people can let go, right? I just heard Mike Todd say this. He said, you have to part from to be a part of. Right. There's some things that people need to depart from, whether it be bad habits, whether it be the tithing, whether it be, parting from their mindset and their way of thinking and their modus operandi. You got to part from to be a part of. And so for me, that's just the journey, man. It's continuing to figure out what do I need to separate from to elevate further, and just embracing people that come into my path, helping them change their life to whatever capacity that they see fit and that I can be of a resource. And for people that want to, engage and follow along, the best place is probably Instagram, Brian_Adamson 1. And they can go to my website at brian-adamson.com and find me there as well.
Brother, man, I thank God for you, man. I thank God for this time, this conversation. I'm already thankful in advance for those who are going to hear this and see this. And I'm excited for future conversations that we will have, good brother, man. So salute to you, all blessings over you and your family. I pray that God's face continues to shine upon you and your work, good brother. All right, salute.
Thank you, bro.
No problem, man.